Administrative Protection District Board of Directors regular board meeting, April 22nd, 2020. Roll call, please, Jean.
Before I do roll call, let me say one other thing because Bruce McKimmey was not here when I said this. I need everybody to say their name when they make a motion and when they're speaking, so I know who's speaking in case I can't tell. Thank you. Okay. President Burke.
Here.
Vice President Cockrell.
Here.
Secretary McShane.
Here.
Director McKimmey.
Here.
Director Stockman.
Here.
Okay, Kai Reese.
Here.
Chief Larkin.
Here.
Deputy Chief Cox.
Here.
And myself, Gene Headley.
Thank
Okay.
you. We'll pass on the Pledge of Allegiance for this meeting. Is there any public comment from a member of the public?
I'm not seeing anyone else on.
All right, hearing none, moving on to the consent calendar. Director McKimmey is asked to be recused from voting on the consent calendar. Do I have a motion on the consent calendar, please?
So moved.
Who is that?
This is JB. I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion. Jenny McShane.
Moved and
Okay,
seconded. Moved
Gary,
and
may I
roll
make,
call.
Gary, may I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Would it be good in this format to just, since JB and Jenny have done this, to just have them make each and second it, just the two of them, so it reduces confusion over jumping in?
That's fine with me. Is that all right with anybody?
Good with me.
JB, then would ask you to make the motion and Ginny to second as we go through this. Obviously, if there's any disagreement, we'll stop and do otherwise, but that might speed it up. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
There are a lot of resolutions coming up, you know.
Yeah, understand. And JB and
Okay.
Ginny will be doing the motioning in the second.
Okay.
Roll call, please, on the consent calendar, please, Jean.
Secretary McShane.
Yes.
Director Stockman.
Yes.
Director McKimmey is recused. Vice President Cockrell
Yes.
and President Burke.
Yes. Moving on to
Passes
item number
401.
6, continuing business. Item A, review, discuss, and approve weed abatement contract, Chief Cox.
Yeah, thank you. So just for some clarification, this is where property owners have the ability to appear and object if they receive notice to remove weeds from their properties and they believe their properties are in compliance. So I would ask that the board open to public comment to see if there's any objections for people who believe they're in compliance already.
So open, the public comment is now open. Hearing. No
I have a
comment-
public comment slip, Mr. Burke.
Hearing no public comment, I close the public
I-
meeting. Yes, Ginny?
It came to my attention by one of the neighbors that they were unable to cut their lawn. So they're afraid that the fire department's going to charge them.
Won't happen.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we've closed the public meeting. Chief Cox,
Great. So only hearing one public comment for the record. If the board is satisfied that the properties that were made during that public comment period were in compliance, they may be removed from the list. However, we did not have that request, just an opinion. And with that, I can turn it over to you for the resolution.
all right, do I have a motion to adopt resolution 2015, resolution authorizing the deputy chief to execute a contract with the lowest responsive and responsible bidder,
So
Paul McGregor Construction for Weed Abatement Services?
this is JB. I move that.
Ginny seconds the motion.
Moved and seconded. Discussion or comments? Roll call, please. Jean?
Secretary McShane,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Director McKinney,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
yes,
President Burt.
Yes.
Passes
Moving on.
5-0 by roll call.
Moving on to item B, and Chief Cox, I'm going to ask if you would just include this item with the discussion on item D under new business, because they're closely related, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So at board's direction, myself and Chief Larkin have done an evaluation of the fleet. And if you remember, Chief Cole had a mobile equipment replacement plan or rolling stock replacement plan that expired, I believe it was last year. So what you're looking at here is the 10-year mobile equipment replacement plan. The highest level and most important thing to focus on is the fire apparatus themselves. And this is all dictated by NFPA 1911, which is the National Fire Protection Agency. And they basically outline what the life expectancy and the evaluation process for fire apparatuses should be for fire agencies across the US. If you look at it, for our fire apparatus, we do a 15-year replacement cycle on our frontline fire engines. So that would be 40, 41, and 44, as well as our type 6 fire engines, which are 640 and 644. One complication we've had is we purchased all 3 of our last fire engines at once. So theoretically, we would have all 3 fire engines expiring at once and needing replacement, which is a big capital outlay. The thing that comes to our attention pretty quickly was the 2 reserve engines, which are engine 140 and engine 144, are the oldest and most maintenance intensive apparatus on the coast right now. And those are what we recommend we line up for replacement next, basically over the next 5 years, replacing both of those apparatus, putting them on frontline status and moving some of the older apparatus to reserve status. Beyond that, we look at some of the specialized and support apparatus. Those are the Quint and the Rescue. Those are both new, so we won't be replacing those in the next 10 years. We look at the ERV, which is the emergency response vehicle, the quad type vehicle. And then lastly, we look at the support vehicles or the staff vehicles that we have. Not as expensive, but obviously there are more of them. What we've done is we've come up with a 10-year plan that addresses both NFPA 1911. It puts a 7-year cycle on all of the staff vehicles. The immediate kind of deficiency we have is we have vehicles that are well beyond their life expectancy on the staff and utility side. That includes Utility 40. It includes the old Chief's vehicle that has over 250,000 miles on it. So the 2 items together are kind of interrelated in the sense that the mobile equipment plan is the 10-year vision for what mobile equipment could or should be in the district. And then the item later on in the agenda tonight is the actual approval of replacing some of those staff vehicles to get in line with our schedule.
And look, we're going to be taking up at this time also, just to be clear, I'm going to ask for a vote on item D under new business, which is related to this subject. So any questions on item D, which is the replacement plan that's in your packet that calls for a expenditure of $223,000 for 2 chief officer vehicles and 2 staff vehicles and 1 support utility vehicle. Let me just, while you're contemplating this, let me just mention that I think some might remember that not too many years ago, we did not have a replacement schedule and were caught short on a very embarrassing situation. The board asked for a replacement schedule. We then produced a reserve fund of $1 million, which we have to support that replacement fund, which still is in existence. And also note that in our current budget, which we approved this past year, there's also $800,000 for capital equipment purchases. So the policy part of this, if you will, we've done. We've taken care of it. Now the chief has said that this is kind of the operations part of it that we've previously laid the groundwork for. That would be my input. Questions and discussion.
No, it's a good plan. We're past time. If they're past their useful life, my gosh, we should have replaced them before. And I see the abilities worked their way into the picture. Oh, well.
Well, I think the
Who's
biggest
your friend?
I
Steve,
think Steve, talk-
Who's your friend on your shoulder, JB?
That's Marika.
Okay.
Steve Stockman, please.
I'm gonna get
yeah, I
rid
think the biggest factor really is how much, just like our personal cars, is that point to where the maintenance costs get so high. And it seems like the staff vehicles are, you know, they can have a longer life than the fire apparatus, but I appreciate the way the timeline's drawn out here, and I'm thankful that we have the funds to replace those. So, and I can go back and look, because I like how now you can see the cost of maintenance in our monthly report. And, you know, to eliminate that is also an added cost to the budget, even though you're putting the outlay for the vehicles. I think some of those high expense repair costs go away. So I'm pleased for that to come. That's all.
Other questions or comments? Then I'd like a motion to approve the expenditure of $223,775 to replace the support vehicle, 2 chief officers' vehicle, and 2 staff vehicles. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Moved and
Ginny.
second. Further discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Secretary McShane,
yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Director McKinney,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Passes
Moving
5-0
on,
by
but
roll call.
Thank you.
Okay.
Moving on to new business, number A, community facility, district number 22, Chief Cox. And then while you're looking at that, just to make, we passed a resolution in the February meeting of our intent to form this particular CFD. So this is a continuation. Chief Cox?
Yeah, that's correct. This is really just the formality of the authorization for that levy of tax for that special district, looking for your resolution approval.
So this is not new. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution 2020-11, a resolution of annexation of territory to community facility district number 22, and authorize a special tax submitting levy of special tax to qualified electors?
This is JB. I so move.
Ginny, second,
Moved and second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Secretary McShane,
yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Director McKinney,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
5-0 by roll call.
Item B, motion to adopt resolution 2020-12, a resolution calling for a special election for the annexation of territory to community facility district number 22 and the levy of a special tax. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second, Ginny,
Discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Secretary McShane,
yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Director McKinney,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
5-0 by roll call. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item B, new business review and approve financial statements and independent auditors report for the year ending June 2019. Chief Cox.
Yeah, so per the statutory responsibility of the district, this is the audit for the financial year that ended on June 30th of 2019. I think the most important part to highlight here is a part of attachment 2 that contains the findings or the kind of summary from that auditor with no major discrepancies or anything that was called out is needing immediate attention.
Let me just add a couple of points. We did not have a finance committee meeting due to the situation regarding the virus, but just my comments are on the audit. First of all, it's a solid audit. And if you go through the, whatever the heck it is, 100 pages on this thing, you'll notice that district-wide net position is some $22 million. A year ago in the 18 audit, it was $18 million. So we've improved our net position. Our general revenue was up about $1 million over the prior year to $12.2 million. Total revenue of $14 million, but that included the $1.2 million from the land sale at Station 41. Our program expenses were down a few $100,000 from the prior year, and our reserves which still includes $12 million in LAIF and $2 million in San Mateo County. The district, as you all know, has no long-term debt, and we have an unqualified audit report. The focus that I looked at in this, I don't know if you looked at it, the healthcare thing, the PAS report, and then we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but for the point of this audit, the PAS report was very positive. We paid $279,000 out for healthcare during the year and basically ended up flat in terms of the amount of revenue that was in the account. On the CalPERS side of the thing, if you look in the audit, the picture isn't quite as rosy, and I'm not going to go through all of that, but our net liability increased as of June 30th of this past year. And if you have been reading any of the things in the paper relative to some of the difficulties CalPERS is having this year, it is going to be particularly bleak for us and any kind of small business, any small cities or maybe major ones in the future. And the other thing I would look at in the audit, that in fact, in actual practice, salaries and benefit percentage of total revenue was some 60%. And as you know, we had a goal of 75%. And a lot of that clearly was due that we had some vacancies in various positions, a chief and the administrative staff as well. But the overall audit appeared, from my point of view, to be very solid and welcome. Questions or any comments?
This is JB. I'm just reading about the net pension liability of the $12 million. Is that a reliable number?
Well, you know, yes, it is. I mean, the auditor says it is, and what it is, it's, you know, I've always been somewhat mystified by some of the figures or lack of them coming from CalPERS, but if I look back from to 2015, our liability at that time was $8.4 million. At this audit, it's $12.4 million. We're not making progress. And it's not anything we've done, obviously. It's simply the way the monies at CalPERS has been invested and their management of the funds. But with the things that are happening relative to the virus to the financial community, I think we're going to be shocked to see what we might be facing in the coming year. But We'll see. But first of all, well, you know, it's fun to discuss it, but as you all know, we have absolutely no control over it. And secondly, we have an obligation to fund whatever is asked of us. So that's the bottom line.
Thank you.
Discussion or any other items on it? Then do I have a motion to adopt resolution 2020-13, accepting the audited financial statement?
So moved.
Second, Ginny.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Jean?
Secretary McShane,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Director McKinney,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
President Burke,
Yes.
passes 5-0 by roll call.
We've already taken care of item D under new business. Going on to item E, review and discuss approve agreement for professional services for audit. Chief Cox.
About item E, Mr. President,
What did I
7C.
See.
Item C was missed.
Oh, I'm sorry,
7C.
I skipped C. Thank you very much. Item C, review and discuss updated PTM benefit assessment tax. Chief Cox.
Yes, so at the direction of the board, it was noted that the Point Montera benefit assessment, which is the special benefit assessment in Point Montera, was showing over a 5-year period, it was running around $70,000 a year, and then in the 18-19 fiscal year dropped off significantly. So we went back and re-examined all of the revenues, and we actually found a few things, but most importantly, we found that some of the prior secured taxes had been misallocated within the revenue side. So if you look at that spreadsheet there, you'll see in 1021, the account number 1021, and that's the property tax current secured, went down, and the correct amounts were reallocated into the sub account numbers. So if you look at Point Montera, which is 2422, the special charges for that benefit assessment, which is revenue that we receive in, that difference is about $19,000, and it became much more in line with the prior 5 years at $74,000 for that fiscal year. It was a good call out, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. And I'm glad we could get all of that money back into the right allocated funds for what they were actually brought in from. So this was really more of an informational. It was not a resolution or adoption, but it was just information to bring back to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And if you recall, I was somewhat suspicious that the county was siphoning off a little bit of our money. And, but I'm very appreciative. We are very appreciative of the work and digging out and understanding. And no money was missing. It was just, as the chief said, just put in the wrong accounts, that's all.
Yeah, that's right. And one other thing I'll just call out is ERAF this year is being distributed twice a year instead of once a year. So we'll see that difference on this fiscal year.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions?
Not for me.
I've got one, Gary.
Yeah.
And it may be more general. It doesn't really fit here, but as the junior director, you know, I struggle a little bit with the financials of understanding the district's funding as it relates to property tax and secure and unsecured, and how it's divided into different sections. And I wonder if maybe staff at some point could just take the time to give 5 minutes and kind of describe how that breakdown is, not in this meeting, but in the future, if we could add that. I think it would be helpful for me as a director, and maybe to anybody in the public. We just have a stronger understanding of funding. Does that seem appropriate?
Very appropriate. And Chief, I just ask it when it's convenient to put that back on the agenda and educate us as to, and the public, as to how the taxes come from and so forth. Because this isn't a point you raised, Steve, but if for example, the parcel tax is a little different from the old Point Montera district than it is from the Half Moon Bay district. It's minor, it doesn't amount to much, but they were passed by voice votes, elections and so forth, and we don't have the ability to change them without going to the public, but that kind of stuff I think would be helpful to get an update on, Chief. So if you wouldn't mind at some point in time to do that. Thank you, Steve. Moving on now to item E, review and discuss approve an agreement for professional service for Auditor Chief Cox.
Yes. So
Gary,
sorry.
I want to add to that, Gary, and say that a lot of that business was taken up when we consolidated our districts.
Correct. Yes, that's true. Thank you. Chief Cox?
Yeah, so item number E is for auditing services, again with Harshwall and Company. If you remember, the original contract had the options for a 2-year extension. We believe it would be a good decision for the board to continue with them for the next 2 years. This resolution is to authorize the execution of a contract with them, and this would just be utilizing a standard district consulting contract.
Do I have a motion for item, resolution 2020-14, the agreement for the auditor Hashwell and Company?
So moved.
Second,
Discussion. You know, this is just an ad hoc comment. I remember not too many years ago, the auditor dropped us because we had some challenges. So it's refreshing now that they want our business. Okay. With that, roll call, please, Jean.
Secretary McShane,
yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Director McKimmey,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
President Burke,
Yes.
passes 5-0 by roll call.
Thank you. Moving on to item F, review and discuss proposed 7-year operating plan. Chief Cox.
Yeah, thank you, Director. This is really the culmination of a lot of hard work by Director Stockman and Director McKimmey, meeting with myself over several hours and several meetings, and really going through what it is the next 7 years of the district looks like as far as the operations are concerned. I just want to say a big thank you to both of them for going through the painful process with me line by line about operations here and how it works and what we want to see in the future and what that looks like. So in front of you is a document that would be a supplement to the 7-year cooperative agreement with CAL FIRE that will most likely be agendized for next month, really spelling out the operations of the coast over the next 7 years. It's broken out into 2 sections. The first section is more of a narrative, positional roles and responsibilities. And then it gets into a little bit about the district, the assets, the stations, prevention, training, and whatnot. And then it gets into the deliverables themselves. And there's 2 distinct deliverables sections. There's the annual deliverables, which must be done every year. And then there's other deliverables, which are those items that we would like to see occur over the next 7 years based on people's priorities and the focus of what everyone's looking at. I will say it does include, it's fairly inclusive in the sense that it does include the apparatus replacement plan. It includes, you know, from big items to small items and everything in between. But this really is the culmination of all of that work, trying to capture into one document what the next 7 years would look like under a new contract.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Comments and
Director.
questions? Well, let me just add, I think, first of all, thanks to Bruce and Steve for their work, and you, Chief Cox. This is just a very impressive document, and it fills in a lot of holes that was not in our previous documents. And I think that it's incumbent upon us as board to say to have our input into the overall CAL FIRE contract, and this certainly does that. While I have it, there's just one minor thing that I'd like to ask you to look into, Chief, if you don't mind, because I glanced at this. I believe, and I shouldn't say I believe, I'd like to have you check. I think the vision and mission and the core values are not the current ones that we have.
Okay, I will double check that.
Okay, I think they were, but with the exception of that, Other comments?
Yeah, I would like to thank Chief Cox, who did all the heavy lifting on this rascal, and he did a great job. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, I think it, and also to you, Chief Cox, it brings me peace of mind to have a more clear, detailed view of where the district's going. And I appreciate the allowed input and your acceptance to it. I think we all as board members and staff have a shared vision of what we think the district could be at its best. And this, I think, document reflects that.
This item doesn't say a vote, but I'm going to ask you to approve the proposed 7-year operating plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Secretary McShane,
yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Director McKimmey,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
and President Burke.
Yes.
Passes 5-0 by roll call.
Moving on to item G, review and discuss an agreement for professional service to record the public board meetings. Chief Cox.
Yeah, so if you remember our previous agreement with the Montera FOG that we have for recording our board meetings, they noticed us that they would no longer be able to provide that service after this month. We did get a recommendation for a replacement based on that organization. It's Pacifica Community Television who does this exact work in the Pacifica area. We reached out to them and were able to come to an agreement as to the services they could provide for us. Obviously, the current format we're in doesn't require it because we can record it and post it ourselves. However, once we do get back to some normalcy, whenever that may be, this contract would kick in and we'd have their services at our meetings.
Discussion?
What would the cost implications be going forward?
Yeah. So we pay a rate of about $495 specifically for the service on a meeting by meeting basis. And that includes the setup, the recording, and then getting the recording back to us to be able to post. The alternative would be to do it in-house, although it wouldn't be as professional and kind of record and post by ourselves. I think the only concern there is, the audio quality, or if there's any technicalities that we wouldn't be able to address in the moment.
So then, am I to understand that the cost is similar to what we were paying before? Is that an accurate statement?
That's correct. Yeah. There is an actual cost of $300 for their services, $300 per meeting recorded by them. This contract does outline the fact that if we cancel a meeting on them, we are still on the hook for $120 for a fee of cancellation from the district.
Okay. Thank you.
And we would still be able to access, the public would be able to access meetings via their at-home computer.
They do a good job, Chief.
Yeah, for what it's worth, this is Gene. I've known Pacifica Television Community for years and years, and they do wonderful work. And Marty, the guy that runs it, is beyond belief. He's really good. So you've done a good thing.
How does the public access this? That's the question. Is it
So-
just like Montera FOG?
Yeah, there's two ways that we can, speaking with them, two ways that we can have them work is they provide us with the actual video and we could post it on our own platform. So, we have a YouTube channel that we can post it to every week, every month when we get the video. or they can post it for us. So it's really our choice as to how they post it and where they post it.
Fine with me.
Yeah, sounds good.
Do I have a motion to approve agreement for professional services to record the board meetings? What's the name of it? Oh, Pacific Community Television Incorporated, resolution number 2020-16.
So moved.
I second the motion.
Moved in second. Further discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Secretary Shane,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Director McKinney,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
and President Burt.
Yes.
Passes 5-0 by roll call.
Moving on to Board of Directors and Chiefs report. The Finance Committee, as I mentioned earlier, did not have a meeting. In your packet is the spreadsheet actually is a spreadsheet for February and March. Looking at the latest one, the March spreadsheet, just a couple of quick comments. One is that this is the first time that we've had actual CAL FIRE amounts on the spreadsheet. Previously, we had estimates for the year, so we had actual for 3 quarters of the year there. Secondly, as you can see on this, that with 1 quarter to go in the year, we're at 64% of expenses and 68% of revenue is in. So if you look at this, it looks to be in fine shape, at least from my perspective. Discussions or any questions on the finance statement? Okay, moving on, Volunteer Committee, Director Cockrell.
No meeting, no report.
Land and Structures, Director Cockrell, Director Stockman.
No, nothing. We discussed it, JB and myself, and no, there's been nothing that's happening in this period.
And obviously, we're not having a closed session this evening, so that will be something we might be looking at in another month or so. Director McKinney, any comments on the new 41?
No, I haven't stopped in and went inside and just drive by, but you know, they're still marching along.
I drove by there the other day and the light stanchions are up, which gives it kind of a close to final.
Sure, some
Yeah.
character.
I drove by it this afternoon, and maybe Chief Cox can confirm this. There were 3 AT&T trucks there, so I assume they were moving those phone lines finally.
He's nodding.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, we the subject of an open house, which it was in the back of our mind at some point, is now kind of hazy in the future, and probably at subsequent board meetings we'll discuss how, what, or where we might want to handle that, whether we have a virtual open house or just what we might want to do, but that's an open subject at this point.
Well, I like Steve's idea, and I think if we have to delay it, well, in fact, would be a soft opening, which means the station would be operational. And then when this COVID situation gets more static, then we could have a real honest, this grand opening with the high school band and all the kinds of things like that Steve was suggesting.
May I bring up one other point on 41 while we're on it? We could do it in the chief's report, but I think it's appropriate now. Is when you drive by it, and now that the construction trailer's been moved, you can kind of get more a sense of that triangle piece that's going to be undeveloped. And I know I brought it up earlier in the process before we even broke ground about the possibility of how to use that. Maybe in a passive way. I picture it because we haven't started the landscaping, and I do not know the complications within the county of making any kind of change. But it seems like, if there was even a bench there, a plaque, a gravel walkway, the surrounding area is kind of, still rural. It's a dirt walking path. But the increased activity on that corner, it really is a gateway into El Granada. And I wonder if we could consider the cost of just doing some kind of passive improvement instead of just leaving it in weeds, because I think the architectural plans don't call for anything being done there. But I just bring that open to discussion and thoughts. You know, it seems like it would be something that could actually be a minimal cost. It could be included with whatever landscape, whatever sub is doing that work. And I think it would be a, you know, a goodwill gesture to the community. It could also involve maybe a partnership with Granada Community. You know, maybe they would help pay for some of the landscaping, or I don't know. It's worth a discussion before we lose the moment, because it could be done now fairly easily. If we decided to do something as a district later, it would be probably more complex and difficult. So I'm open to anyone's thoughts on that.
I don't, it sounds fine. I don't know whether in the architectural drawings there was any, what it even looked like, whether it was left just vacant or what was there. Maybe the first thing we ought to do is ask Jeff, was there any plans for that corner that as you mentioned? If there are none, you know, certainly we can investigate. I don't know whether this goes through another local development permit from the county or what has to be done, but your point's well taken. We ought to take a look at it. Yeah. I'm
I
sorry.
just had one comment on that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So on that change of making any change to the plans with the county, it's very difficult to make any kind of those last minute changes. It may stall some things in the. We gotta. So we can look into it, but I would highly recommend that just in the few changes we made, we had some significant little hurdles to get over with just adding the drain that goes across the street. So it was kind of a big hurdle to get over just to make that slight change and just with the drainage stuff. So something we need to look into and talk with Jeff Katz about, see what that looks like. But part of that planning process was to leave that undeveloped area kind of just bare and natural.
Well, let's
I
do
agree
this.
with it, Mr. President. I agree with the chief. This is something during this pandemic that we can put off for the time being.
Yeah, I don't think the suggestion was that we're going to rush out today and do
No,
it.
I mean,
but-
we don't even have to plan it at this time. We
Yeah.
can wait. Because if
Let's just ask Katz what is the design. I have no idea. In
More
fact,
paperwork to the county, then it delays the sign off.
yeah, I don't think we're ready to go to the county with any
No,
suggestions yet.
I'm saying that let's table this for the time being.
That's fine. But in the meantime, just ask Jeff. In fact, you know, I don't know what even on the north end of we have a little bit of land that's just kind of a big hole now. I mean, I don't know what do we plant a tree there or something? Anyway, let's just ask him, and then we can pursue that and see what we're dealing with. Okay. All right.
I think Steve's on the right track, but I don't think we have to make a particularly big deal about it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, you know, you remind me that when we did the environmental EIR and looked around, the only suggestion, as I recall, we had was that along the top of the site, we originally, the picture had some big tall trees, and some people took umbrage with that and said it would block their view and all that, and asked us to put smaller bushes of trees so it wouldn't be so obvious in blocking the view. But other than that, I don't recall anybody saying anything about the land on either end of it. But let's see what Jeff says, and then we'll see what we can do with it. Okay, moving on. Special Districts Association, Director McKimmey.
No meeting, no report.
ALS JPA, Director McKimmey.
Same deal, no meeting, no report.
Emergency Preparedness, Director Stockman.
No, obviously we haven't been meeting in the community for that either, but I will give a shout out to Chief Cosgrave for he's posting updates of what the district's actions are, and then also as it relates to CERT. encouraging this new CERT members to, of what their participations have been on a personal level during this, isolation. So it's been a good continuing contact within that group. So the message goes on, but no meetings. Thank you.
Chief Cosgrave has put out a number of emails that I read, and they are definitely worth reading. I was
Yes.
surprised, very pleasantly surprised. They're almost.
Yes. He's a very good writer.
Very good. All right, attorney's report. Kai?
Well, Kai is gone and Jean is here. So good
Oh,
evening,
Jean.
everyone.
Hi, Jean.
Hey,
Oh,
Jean.
I apologize. I arrived a bit late because I had another fire board meeting. The only thing I'd like to say is a thank you to our contractor on the station build. The county, under its shelter-in-place order, stopped all construction with the exception of essential services. And the contractor has been very responsive. We had a little bit of a back and forth with the county on whether or not the building was an essential service building, which is sort of a surprising back and forth. But through that all, the contractor has been terrific and has worked very cooperatively with us. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Great to hear. Jean, I think you deserve a medal. Jean, as I read an email, you were actually going to 2 fire districts meetings in one day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just too
Well, she's
much of a
popular.
load.
Good.
Okay, nice to see you. Okay, moving on. Fire chief report, Chief Larkin and Chief Cox.
Yeah, so just a few things. First of all, I'll start with, sorry, is that? Perfect. I'll just start with the COVID-19 update. As I sent that email out to you, not too much has changed. There's a lot of measures being taken place by our firefighters right now to reduce the risk of exposure. And that includes everything from the number of people we're sending into each call to what they're doing when they get back, and the clothes they're wearing, the shoes they're wearing, the temperatures they're taking, the way they're living is changed significantly within the station because of this. Families that may come by to drop off something to dad at the fire station, all of those interactions are taking place at distance away, so much different than what we're used to. As far as call volume is concerned, we've seen about a 22% reduction in call volume, and that's consistent with across the county what's happening. People not being on the roads, people not being in industrial accidents. We're not seeing the high call volume, but the calls we are going on are significant. And I think that's important to note is the calls that people are making for 911 to be taken to a hospital are ones where the hospital is the last resort and very important to go. What we've also had is Ken Lord, one of our battalion chiefs here on the coast, has been in our county EOC for probably over 6 weeks now, as well as myself. I was in there for a few weeks, some of our fire captains and other battalion chiefs. And really what we've been doing is supporting the health department and the EMS system with coordinating with the fire service. So this is planning for what would happen if the fire service had a reduction in the number of firefighters or number of staffed apparatus, how we respond, how we get tested as first responders. And as you can imagine, it has been a long process, a lot of changes, but if anything, a lot of compliance from our firefighters and a lot of patience as things change on a day-to-day basis. So all in all, a lot of changes. We're doing well. Firefighters are doing well, and we'll continue to do so until things do change. One item that has come up recently as an issue in relation to COVID-19 is landscaping versus vegetation management. As you're aware, the order from the county health officer prohibits landscaping such as mowing your ornamental lawn. However, cutting dead and dying weeds for a fire hazard is not the same as landscaping your yard for superficial purposes. So that's something that we're trying to message, especially as we're in that crunch period of making sure that people adhere to defensible space and weed abatement. Our fire marshal has been in contact with all the fire marshals in the county to have a common message that fire defensible space, yes. Gardening, no. Those are the two differences that we're really trying to get across. The only other impact from the COVID-19 on the operations side is our firefighters are now training in the unit for their firefighter training that would have otherwise been done at the state site. And that's really to disperse the classes of 40 firefighters into much smaller numbers in different parts of the state. So our training bureau here on the coast and on the other side on the county fire program have done an amazing job of stepping up and really giving these crews the training they need to go back and test on the skills for the positions that they're working. One other important thing to note is we did receive word that we have achieved our District of Transparency Award.
Really?
That should be coming through officially in the mail here any day, but we've been given a heads up. And as you'll remember, that predicates the District of Distinction Award, which we'll be applying for next. So that's a good feather in our cap. As for hiring, we have the battalion chief's positions. We've advertised them. We'll be interviewing next Monday for those positions. We had a healthy interest. We had 21 candidates apply. We have 19 that we're going to be interviewing. We hope to have more information on that next month. We will be, again, reaching out through the hiring process for the division chief, for the operations division chief, to get that position filled on a second round. And we've also submitted the paperwork for the staff services analyst. That period is open right now for candidates who want to apply. So we should have some fairly larger announcements at next month's meeting. Just circling back to Station 41, you'll note that AT&T was there. Director Stockman, we're also working with Comcast to get them out. The utilities are one aspect of it. Kind of the other two focuses are the FF&E, and this is a real sticky wicket because the FF&E, which is the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, is really hard to come by right now. So desks, chairs, recliners, all the stuff that is built elsewhere, we've basically been told, we're not in production at the moment. So just for everyone's radar, there is the potential that some of the items that we want in that station are going to be delayed just because of the shutdown that's going on across the country. But we're talking to multiple vendors. We're trying to get everything lined up so that when we can get that equipment in there, we will. The final part of that is we've just been working fairly closely with the fire station alerting system, and that's the system that goes into basically ring down the firefighters. And that process has started. So as we talk about kind of getting to those later stages, the speakers are going in, all the actual servers and components necessary to ring down the station are going in at the moment. And then just finally, we did receive that volunteer firefighter grant, if you'll remember earlier in the year. All of that equipment was purchased and delivered. So it's here and will be distributed out to the firefighters. And we will be going for reimbursement for all of that material, that PPE here in the next month. End report.
Chief Larkin, did you have any item to add?
Transition.
Yeah, the only thing, sorry, Chief Larkin's right next to me here. We don't want to get any feedback by turning on both mics. The only thing he asked to project was the level 2 staffing for CAL FIRE, which is the state staffing that occurs, has occurred. And that means that we have 3 Type 3 state wildland engines now in the county: Pescadero, Skylonda, and Belmont. The final stage of that will come closer to the summer months, where we'll bring that 4th engine on in the county as well. But we have started to staff for the wildland fire season and anticipate, obviously, fire activity picking up if rain has subsided.
Gee, did I understand earlier you mentioned you thought we would have the CAL FIRE contract next month?
Correct. Yeah, the CAL FIRE contract will be available next month. It is with legal right now, and we will be adding that operating plan that we talked about tonight as a component of it.
Very good.
I've got
Question?
a question as to medical responses within the district. Have we had any known COVID-19 cases?
Yeah, so I don't know if I can pass along any HIPAA restricted information about call details. I will say that firefighters are going on these calls that present as potentially throughout the county. So as Dr. Morrow has said, the county health officer, he believes this virus is throughout the county. But specific calls, I can't answer that specifically, but we do have calls that we're going on and taking precautions because they may have the symptoms.
I'm just curious if we had an isolated case or more than one.
Yeah.
Within the district, just everything else. No details other than that.
Yeah, and it's hard for us too because we go and treat and then they get transported to the hospital and whatever they're diagnosed with is between them and their doctor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Other questions?
Chief, has there been any effect on staffing, additional overtime, people not being able to, normal positions not being able to come to work? Has there been any?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were very concerned about that early on. A lot of us at the higher chief level. What we have seen is because we have canceled all non-essential training, and because vacations, you can't fly on airplanes, you can't get on cruise ships. Two things are happening. One, the staffing that we would have to hire behind people at training is not there, so overtime has gone down a little bit. And we've actually had some firefighters return their requests for vacation because they have nowhere to go, right? Their flights are canceled, they have no cruises to go on. So ironically, kind of a different effect, but we're still concerned that our frontline firefighters are probably some of the most vulnerable to being exposed to this when they go out there.
Thank you.
Question? Bruce?
Yeah, I'm going to sign off because I have another board meeting to call in. So, and it just looks like PARS is left anyway, and I shouldn't be.
Well, it's left to me to give you bad news. I'll take care of that.
Okay.
All right, Bruce, you're
Thank
excused.
you.
Bye, Bruce.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Stay
All right,
safe.
thank you. Everybody
Bye.
else, stay safe.
With that introduction, let me bring your attention the PAS report, and skipping the February one, just go to well, they're both bad news, but as you can see, particularly in March, there was a loss of $447,000, which was not good news. It's typical of what's happened to the market. I call your attention to the investment return annualized, although this year to date is down, through March is down 7%. Through the life of the program in 10 years is still plus 6%. And I compliment Chief Cox for providing these documents that really lay out historically what's happened with PAS over the past 10 years. And it's very interesting to see what we started with and put money in and what was paid out of the thing. And I think one of the key items that I caught on, if you take a look at the net benefit at the top of the first page, net benefit over the life of the program is $516,000. If you choose to go through the maze of analysis by month, you can, but the bottom line is it's still been a very positive. The other aspect of PAS is that the CalPERS has now has a program, OB, what is it, OB something?
OPAB.
But they have a similar program that they're running similar to what we have with PAS. They also have a program that you can pre-fund your regular retirement obligations as well. There's actually I'm not sure, I think that's next week. There's kind of a video seminar on that I plan to listen to at any rate. I don't see any, given, be careful how I say this, but given CalPERS record, I'm not inclined to rush out and change it. The only choices we have with PAS, by the way, is to stay with PAS or to go to CalPERS to implement it. We cannot move that money around. It's locked. It's for the retirement, or rather the healthcare of retirees. But anyway, that's it. Any questions on that? Other than that, I'd call your attention to the, Chief Cox, did you have a comment?
No, that's
okay.
it.
And I'd just point out that we have a nice little note from Chad Hooker relative to the the cancellation of the event at the airport. Other than that, anything else? This has worked extremely well. Chief, thank you for setting it up very well. I was a little bit apprehensive as to how this would come off. It's come off terrific. Where we act like we know what we're doing, at least I.
I want to thank Chief Cox
I
too.
really
I really do.
I enjoyed this very much.
Yeah. Without objections, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Chief.
Bye.
Bye, Jean.
Bye, Jenny. Stay well. Hope your teeth are all right.
Oh, yeah, I went to Dr. Kabori today. He's up in
Okay.
Florida. Thanks,
I know,
Jean.
but thanks for not seeing me because I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay,
All right.
bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.